Okay. Hopefully you guys can all see this. And let me move the chat over here so that I can see what's going on in case anybody. Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Okay. In this assignment, you will create a tic-tac-toe game. Specifically, and I kind of went through it step by step so it would be less overwhelming. Okay. Number one, create a tic-tac-toe class. Okay. You know how to create classes. The constructor should accept no arguments. Okay, great. That's easy. Okay, I mean, obviously it's going to accept the self argument, but that goes without saying, but it's not going to accept anything additional. Okay, the constructor should create a new TK window. We know how to do that. Okay, window equals TK. Create a status label instance variable. We know how to create instance variables. Okay, this is going to be a label. Okay. We're going to create a buttons instance variable initially set to an empty list. We know how to do that. Okay. And I point out that this variable will hold 9 button objects. Again, this is what you would use right here for the 2D list. At least that's the way I would set it up. You don't have to, but that's what I would recommend. Okay. You need to create a player 1 turn instance variable to keep track of whose turn it is. So in other words, when player 1 turn is equal to true, that means that it's the X's are going to go. And when player 1 turn equals false, then the O's are going to go. Okay, so it's just a Boolean. That's all it is, player 1 turn. Okay, so initially you would probably want to set that to true because X goes first in tic-tac-toe. Okay, and then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to create 9 button objects corresponding to the buttons on the tic-tac-toe game. Okay. So again, I would, if it were me, I would do a 2-dimensional list. So in the first row, I would have, button 0, 0 is going to be a button, button 0, 1, button 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. Like that's the way that I would do it. Okay. And we know how to create lists. We know how to append things to lists. We know how to start with an empty list and append to it. Okay. So we've done all that before. Okay. And then since we have a, in step A where we create a new TK window, that's where we're going to have the self.window equals TK. Then step F is just self.window.main loop. Okay. And I'm going to go over briefly how to take all of this TK, tkinter stuff and shove it into a class of your own creation. I'm going to show you a really, really quick and simple example of that today. Okay. And so then in number 2, your solver method. Okay. Again, it's going to accept no arguments except for self. Obviously, we know that in class methods, you always have that first argument is self. We should know that by now. Okay. And then basically all you're going to do is in this buttons instance variable that stores all 9 of these buttons, it's going to go through all those buttons and see if there's a winner. So that's where you do the check for the different 8 things, right? You need to check the rows and the columns and all that kind of stuff. Okay. If there's a winner, then the method returns true. If there is not a winner, then that means either the game continues or it just goes on. Okay. There are 8 possible ways to win, 3 in a row in each of 3 rows, 3 columns, or 2 diagonals. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to point out as I was reading over this after I posted it, I did not say that you had to do anything if there is a tie. Okay. So in other words, if all the squares get filled and there's no 3 in a row, then the game's just over. Okay. You do not have to handle that case. Okay. So in that case, what would happen is it would go as if the game continues, but nobody would actually be able to click on anything and do anything. Okay. All right. So then we're going to create a click handler method. I'm going to briefly go over how to so we kind of touched on that a little bit last time where we had a command argument when we created the button. Different way to do it to bind a handler. Basically to bind a function to a particular widget so that when you click on it, it fires that function. And This basically says what it's supposed to do. It's going to accept an event object. Again, I'm going to be going over that a little bit today. And so all this method's going to do is it's going to get the text of the button that's clicked. So that text is either going to be completely blank or it's going to have an X or an O in it. Okay. If the text is blank, that means nobody's played it. Then you need to set it to either X or O based on whoever's turn it is. Okay. And then once you've done that, you need to call the solver method to see whether or not somebody's won the game. Okay. If they've won the game, then you need to change the status label, which is up here in step 1B, to this message. Okay. Where, yeah, so it's either player 1 wins or player 2 wins. Okay. And if there's if a valid move is made, but there is no winner, then you just change the label to the other person, right? So if the label said it's player 1's turn, they click, it draws an X, and then there's still no winner, then the label should switch to player 2's turn. Okay. So that's it. That's all that it is. Okay. I actually, let me see here. Programs. I actually worked this out. Okay. And my solution was 69 lines of code. Okay. So we're not talking about, this isn't, you're not going to have to write 500 lines of code or 1,000 lines of code. This is 69 lines of code, and you've got plenty of time to do it. So shouldn't be that bad. Okay. And then I give you some hints here. Again, we're going to be going over the grid method today. I talk about how the solver, you need to check the 8 possible places. I'm going to be going over the event.widget variable in the click handler today. And I'm going to be talking about, the rest of this stuff here in the hints today. Okay. So that is step by step, precisely what it is I'm expecting you to do. And again, I'll show you what it looks like when you run it. Okay. So I have this board here. All right. And I see it says player 1's turn down here. Okay. So I can click anywhere I want. I'll just click there. So I get an X. Okay. And now I'll notice that the label has changed to player 2's turn. Okay. I could try and click in the middle here again, but you notice if I do, nothing happens. And in fact, it prints an error message here to the terminal. You don't have to actually print this error message to the terminal. I just did that. Okay. To show that they tried to click on a square that already had a letter in it. So so it's basically not doing anything. So if I click here instead, okay, then it puts an O there and the label switches back to player 1's turn. Okay. And so then the game continues and it's like, okay, I put an X here. All right. And then maybe player 2 blocks it. And so then maybe I put an X here and now player 2 can only go one of 2 different directions. Okay, so let's say I put this here. Then if I put an X here, then you'll notice that it says player 1 wins. Okay, because I've got the 3 X's in a row. Okay, and that's it. Okay, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to if I click here, stuff continues to happen. I can try and click anywhere. Okay, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to do any other checks. You don't have to terminate the program or anything like that. That's just all I wanted you to do. Okay. All right.